Jagadev, and thank you for joining us today. So today we are going to discuss a very famous story from Ramayana. So can you narrate the background of Lord Rama consecrating the Shivalingam at Rameshwaram? Jagadev, and thank you for joining us today. So after Lord Rama defeated Ravana and prepared to return to Ayodhya, he chose to perform penance for killing Ravana, who was a Brahmin by birth, to absolve himself of any sin. Lord Rama wished to worship Lord Shiva. This is when he consecrated the famous Rameshwaram Shivlinga. The tradition is that Rama sent Hanuman to bring a lingam from Kashi, but Hanuman took longer than expected to return. Rama, pressed by time, made a lingam himself from sand with Sita's help. This sets the stage for a profound teaching. Even Hanuman, who is the embodiment of devotion, felt momentarily hurt. He thought, why did my Lord not wait for me? Why did he create a lingam himself? This tiny flash of ego crept into his heart. Yet this was not to diminish Hanuman, but to reveal to the world the supremacy of Lord's will over even the most devoted servants is pride. The Rameshwaram temple today stands as a reminder of this beautiful interplay between devotion, ego, and surrender. Now, why did Lord Rama create a lingam himself instead of waiting for Hanuman? Yes, Jagadav, spiritually, Lord Rama is not just a human prince, he is Maryada Purushottam. He shows how dharma should be upheld above personal sentiments. The time for consecration had arrived, and the sand lingam was created as a symbol of urgency and divine will. Exactly, this is a key moment in the story. When Hanuman arrived later with the lingam from Kashi, he was deeply upset. He wanted his lingam to be worshipped, not the one Rama made. Rama, being compassionate, did not dismiss Hanuman's devotion. Instead, he said, okay, all right, if you can move this sand lingam aside, we will install yours. Hanuman tried with all his mighty strength, but the lingam would not budge. The message was clear. The Lord's decision, once manifested, is beyond even the strength of Hanuman. This story is so relevant in our times, in organizations, and even in spiritual movements. Sometimes we expect things to go our way, but Dharma, what is right at the time, always takes precedence. Ram's act was not to belittle Hanuman, but to expand him. What happened when Hanuman tried to move the sand Shivalingam? Yes, Jagadav Hanumana, full of faith in his strength, thought, surely I can lift and remove a mere sand lingam. But to his surprise, the lingam stayed immovable. He applied all his power, his famed strength that could lift mountains, but the lingam did not move even an inch. This is where the divine play unfolds. Hanuman's pride was momentarily tested. He had never encountered a situation where his strength was insufficient, but here, in front of the Lord's will, all power was rendered ineffective. It humbled him. Finally, Hanuman realized his folly. He bowed down before Lord Rama and accepted that it was not about his strength but the Lord's grace. Ram lovingly assured him that his lingam too would be worshipped. That's why even today at Rameshwaram, alongside the main lingam worshipped as Ramalingeshwara, there is Hanuman's lingam venerated with the equal reverence. The symbolism here is profound. No matter how strong, capable, or devoted we are, without surrender, the ego blinds us. Ram taught Hanuman and through him the world that bhakti would, without humility, can falter. Now, what deeper spiritual meaning can we take from Hanuman's inability to move the lingam? The sand Shivalinga symbolizes the immovable will of the divine. Even infinite strength without surrender is powerless against it. Hanuman's failure teaches us that ego, however subtle, obstructs devotion. And it's important to note Hanuman is the very embodiment of humility. Yet even he had a moment of pride. This shows us that no one is immune. The play of Maya or illusion touches everyone, even the greatest. In the art of living, His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji often reminds us, the moment you think, I know it all, I am indispensable, I am greater than others, that's the beginning of the fall. Just like Hanumana couldn't move the lingam, when teachers or leaders become rigid with ego, they lose their effectiveness. The lingam being unmoved is symbolic, divine will is unshakable. The only way is surrender. When Hanuman surrendered, he found his rightful place, not in competition with Ram's will, but in harmony with it. Now, why did Hanuman of all beings fall into arrogance here? Hanuman is described as Jnana Gunasagar, an ocean of wisdom and virtue, yet he was also given extraordinary powers. Sometimes power itself became the trap. His eagerness to serve made him momentarily feel his offering was more important. This was not arrogance in the worldly sense, but a subtle pride born of devotion. He thought, my Lord deserves the best, and I have brought it. Why should he settle for less? The ego here wore the mask of service. That's why this episode is so important. It teaches that even noble intentions, if colored by ego, can cause disturbance in art of living. His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji often points out that how ego disguises itself as righteousness or excessive zeal. Even a dedicated teacher may sometimes think, without me, the course won't happen, but the divine work always goes on. Just as Ramses Sandlingam remained immovable, the mission moves forward regardless of individual pride. Now, how did Lord Rama handle Hanuman's arrogance? With infinite compassion, Ram did not scold or reject Hanuman. He gave him an opportunity to learn experientially by inviting him to move the lingam. Ram let him discover the limitation of his ego. Yes, Ram's method was not punishment but a gentle awakening. He didn't say, "You are wrong," he said, "Try." And when Hanumana couldn't move it, the realization dawned naturally. This is exactly how His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankarji works with his teachers and volunteers. He doesn't confront ego directly with harshness. Instead, he creates situations where the person's limitation becomes evident to them. That realization is more transformative than any lecture. Ram's approach preserved Hanuman's dignity while teaching him humility. Similarly, Gurudev never breaks people down, but lovingly brings them to self awareness. That's why, even when ego arises, it dissolves quickly in his presence. Now, what happened after Hanuman realized his mistake? Once Hanuman understood that the lingam was immovable, his pride vanished. He prostrated before Rama, asking for forgiveness. His devotion, already supreme, became even purer through this test. Ram then reassured Hanuman, saying, "This lingam would be worshipped. This is significant." Hanuman was not rejected for his pride. Instead, his effort was honored. Both lingams remain at Rameshwaram, teaching us that God accepts all sincere offerings, but humility must prevail. Now, it is said that devotees still first seek darshan of Hanuman's lingam before proceeding to Ram Lingeshwara. This tradition honors Hanuman's devotion and his humility after correction. The lesson is that ego may arise, but the path is to surrender it. In Art of Living 2, Gurudev honors every effort, even when mistakes are made. He uplifts and transforms, not condemns. Now, what role does surrender play in this story? Jagadav, surrender is the key. Hanuman's strength was unmatched, but it failed against the Lord's will. Only when he surrendered did his place in the divine play become clear. This episode teaches that surrender is not weakness but strength. It is through surrender that Hanuman attained even greater glory. His humility after this incident made him even more beloved. Now, in Art of Living, surrender to Gurudev and to the organization's vision is essential. When individuals surrender, their energy flows smoothly into seva. When they resist with ego, they struggle, just like Hanuman struggled with the immovable lingam. The immovable lingam is a reminder the Lord's will is beyond us. We can only align with it. Surrender is alignment with that cosmic flow. Now, how is this story reflected in organizational life today? In any large mission, be it building a temple, running a movement, or managing an organization, people contribute with enthusiasm, but sometimes pride in one's role creates friction. In Art of Living, we have seen volunteers or even senior teachers thinking, "I brought so many participants, I run the center, without me it won't work." That is the Hanuman moment. The Lord's mission, like the sand lingam, stands immovable. The moment one realizes this, the ego dissolves, that seva becomes joyful again. Now, Gurudev often tells us, don't take credit, don't take blame, just be a hollow and empty flute. When we forget this, the lingam story reminds us no one can move what the Lord has established. Now, what is the symbolic difference between Ram's sand lingam and Hanuman's Kashi lingam? Ram's sand lingam represents immediacy, spontaneity, and the Lord's will. Hanuman's Kashi lingam represents a devotion, effort, and service. Both are valid, but when they appear to conflict, the Lord's will prevails. That's beautifully said. Ram's lingam is immovable, meaning divine will cannot be displaced. Hanuman's lingam is installed alongside, meaning sincere effort is always accepted. Together, they teach harmony between surrender and selfless service. In Art of Living, to Gurudev balances these two aspects. Sometimes we plan meticulously, but suddenly he says, "Do it this way." That is the Sandlingam movement. Other times he honors all the effort put in, like with Hanuman's lingam. Both are important, but the ego must bow before the Lord's will. That is the eternal teaching. Now, how does Hanuman's inability to move the lingam symbolize for seekers? Jagadav, it symbolizes the limitation of personal effort when disconnected from divine will. Hanuman had infinite strength, yet the lingam didn't move. This shows us that the divine is not controlled by power but by surrender. For seekers, this is a reminder that no matter how advanced we think we are, whether in meditation, knowledge, or self service, If ego creeps in, it binds us. Hanuman's humility after his failure freed him from the subtle bondage. This also assures us failure in such cases is not destruction but redirection. Hanuman's failure actually gave him a higher place as lingam being worshipped forever. Now, in Art of Living, sometimes a seeker feels, I meditated so deeply, I taught so many courses, I guided so many people. But the moment ego enters, the growth halts. The lingam teaches us divine will is immovable. True success comes in bowing to it. Now, why did Lord Rama allow Hanuman to try instead of simply explaining the futility? Jai Gurudev, because experiential learning is the most powerful. Ram could have said, Hanuman, this lingam cannot be moved, but then Hanuman would not have truly understood. By allowing him to try, Ram made the realization come from within. This is exactly the Guru's method. A realized master rarely imposes wisdom. He creates situations where disciples discover it themselves. That realization is unshakable because it is self earned. In Art of Living, Gurudev does this all the time. He gives volunteers and teachers responsibilities that stretch them. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they stumble. Both outcomes are teachings. Like Hanuman, when we fail, we realize our limitations and surrender more deeply. Ram's compassion was that he let Hanuman try, yet ensured he didn't lose his dignity. This balance of firmness and love is a mark of a true guidance. Now, how does this story show the balance between devotion and humility? Hanuman's devotion was unquestionable, but a devotion without humility can become attachment to one's own effort. The Lingam story shows that humility must accompany devotion. Devotion says, I want to give the best to my Lord. Humility says, yet the Lord knows better than me. When these two meet, devotion becomes perfect. Hanuman's journey from pride to humility in this episode is symbolic of every devotee's growth. In Art of Living, Gurudev emphasizes humility in Seva. He often says, serve without a sense of doership. The Lingam story is a living example. Hanuman's devotion was enhanced, not diminished, when humility entered. That is why we remember him not just as strong or devoted, but as the very embodiment of surrender. Now, what lesson does this story give about timing and divine will? Ram's decision to consecrate the lingam on time shows the importance of divine timing. He did not wait endlessly for Hanuman because Dharma demanded immediacy. Timing in rituals has deep meaning. Certain cosmic alignments make moments powerful. If Ram had delayed, the potency of the act may have diminished. Spiritually, this shows us that divine will operates in its own timing, not ours. Hanuman arrived late, but his effort was not wasted. It found another place. In Art of Living projects, we also see this. Gurudev may decide suddenly, launch this course now, begin this seva tomorrow. If we delay, the moment passes. Like Ram's Sandlingam, divine timing is not negotiable. Our role is to align, not to question. Now, how does the story reflect the relationship between effort and grace? Yagudev Hanuman's effort was immense, traveling to Kashi to bring the best lingam, but effort alone was not enough. Grace determined the outcome. Exactly, grace is like the current in a river, effort is like rowing. If you row against the current, you struggle endlessly. Hanuman's effort without alignment with Ram's grace was futile. Yet grace doesn't negate effort. Ram honored Hanuman's effort by giving his lingam a place. In Art of Living too, effort in seva is essential, but without surrender to Gurudev's grace, effort can turn into frustration. The Lingam story beautifully balances both. Effort is respected, but grace is supreme. Now, why is Rameshwaram considered so sacred because of this incident? Rameshwaram became sacred because it was the meeting point of Ram's devotion to Shiva and Hanuman's surrender to Rama. The two forms of supreme bhakti converged here. Ram worshipped Shiva, showing a humility of the Lord himself. Hanuman surrendered to Rama, showing humility of the greatest devotee. This double surrender sanctified the place eternally. The temple enshrines both lingams, Ram Lingeshwara and Hanuman's lingam, symbolizing harmony of divine will and devotees' effort. That's why in Art of Living pilgrimages, visiting Rameshwaram is encouraged. Gurudev himself has often highlighted its significance. It's not just about geography, it's about inner geography. The temple reminds us that humility sanctifies even the greatest strength. Now, how does the story warn against spiritual pride? Like the spiritual pride is more dangerous than worldly pride. Worldly pride binds you to possessions, but spiritual pride binds you to the illusion of superiority in devotion or knowledge. Hanuman's moment of pride was not about wealth or power, but about service. He thought, my offering is greater. That's spiritual pride. In Art of Living, we often warn against this. Someone may think, I am the best teacher or I do seva better than others. This is exactly the trap Hanuman fell into momentarily. Now, the lingam being immovable is the message. No amount of spiritual pride can override divine will. Only humility ensures progress. Now, why is it important that Hanuman is still honored despite the mistake? This mistake, because mistakes don't diminish through devotion; they refine it. Hanuman's mistake was a learning moment, not a disqualification. This gives hope to all seekers. Even the greatest can falter. What matters is not the mistake, but how quickly you surrender afterward. Hanuman bowed immediately, and that's why he remains the highest devotee. This is why his lingam was installed alongside Ram's. His devotion was still honored. In Art of Living, Gurudev also honors every effort, even if a volunteer makes mistakes. He uplifts them. No one is rejected for faltering. They are guided back to humility. This makes Seva a safe place, safe space for growth. Now, how is Hanuman's strength contrasted with his surrender in his story? Hanuman could leap across oceans, carry mountains, and crush demons, yet in front of a sandlingam, he was powerless. This contrast highlights that strength without surrender. Yes, that the strength without surrender is incomplete. His surrender afterward was his true strength. Physical might impresses the world, but humility impresses the divine. In Art of Living, we see leaders who are strong organizers, teachers, and speakers, but what makes them shine is not their ability, but their surrender to Gurudev's vision. Now, Hanuman's greatest strength was not his muscles, but his bowing head. That surrender made him immortal in devotion. Now, how does this story guide us in dealing with our own ego? Jagadev, the story is a mirror. Whenever we feel my work is greater, my role is indispensable, we must remember Hanuman's struggle with the immovable lingam. Ego always says, I, me, mine. Devotion says, you, Lord, yours. The moment ego arises, even the greatest efforts stall. This doesn't mean suppressing ego forcefully, it means offering it at the Lord's feet, as Hanuman did in Art of Living. Gurudev often creates such mirrors for us. If someone feels too important, he shows them through situations that the work continues regardless, just like Ram's Sandlingam stood firm. The organization stands from the only way forward is humility and surrender. Now, how can this story be applied to senior art of living teachers who feel indispensable? Jagadav, just as Hanuman felt his lingam should be the one installed, sometimes a senior teacher may feel, without me, this program won't happen. But the mission is like Ram's sandlingam, it continues immovable with or without us. Exactly, the organization is rooted in divine will, not in individual egos. When someone thinks they are the doer, they are momentarily like Hanuman before realizing the lingam won't move. Gurudev gently shows such teachers that the real power lies not in them, but in the knowledge and grace that flows through them. This realization dissolves the illusion of indispensability. Now, why do even sincere art of living leaders sometimes fall into the ego trap? Jayaguru, because seva brings joy and recognition. When thousands of participants appreciate someone, the ego can quietly whisper, this is my achievement. It's natural. Even Hanumana, the most humble, was tested in art of living. A leader might think, I organized this but big event, I bought all these people. That's the subtle ego creeping in. But just like the immovable lingam, Gurudev's mission cannot be shifted by individual pride. Sooner or later, the person realizes their strength alone is insufficient. Grace is the true mover. Now, how does Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji address ego in his teachers? He doesn't scold or humiliate, he creates experiences where the ego dissolves naturally. For example, a teacher who feels too important may suddenly find their program successful even when they step aside. That's a sandling a moment. Yet, yes, he makes people see that seva flows through them, not because of them. This realization shatters ego more gently and effectively than criticism. Now, it's the same method Rama used with Hanuman, allowing him to try and fail. So realization comes from within. Gurudev always works that way. Now, what happens when office bearers in art of living compete for recognition? Jagrudev, when competition arises, harmony is lost. Ego makes people think, my project, my center, my recognition. In such cases, it is like two lingams competing, the sand lingam of divine will and the stone lingam of personal pride. The organization cannot flourish with divided intentions. Gurudev often steps in to remind everyone the mission is not about yours or mine, but about seva. He recenters attention on the higher purpose, just like a Rama honored Hanuman's effort but kept the focus on Dharma. Jai Gurudev, so can you give an example of how Gurudev shatters ego in a subtle way? Yes, Jai Gurudev, in many times someone may expect Gurudev to appreciate their work publicly. Instead, he may remain silent or praise someone else. This immediately shows them that recognition should not be the goal. It's like when Hanumana thought his lingam deserved the main place, but Ram kept his sand lingam in the center. The message was service is about surrender, not spotlight, and yet Gurudev always honors effort. He might later acknowledge the person in private, but the ego lesson is already delivered. How can volunteers avoid falling into the same trap as Hanumana did? By remembering that seva is an offering, not a possession. The moment you say, "This is my seva," the ego is entering. Volunteers should see themselves as channels, just as the lingam stayed immovable. The mission is upheld by divine will. Volunteers simply add their drop to the ocean. Daily sadhana, satsang, and seva keep ego in check. That's why Gurudev emphasizes these three pillars. Now, how does the story explain why some leaders burn out in seva? The burnout often happens when people carry the ego of doership. They feel everything depends on me. That pressure is exhausting. Just like Hanumana used all his strength, but the lingam didn't move. Such leaders exhaust themselves without results. When they surrender and remember that it's Gurudev's mission, energy flows naturally. Seva becomes joyful again. That story is a reminder. Don't push the immovable lingam, bow to it. Now, how does the story teach us about working together in art of living? Jagadav, Ram and Hanuman's lingam stand together in Rameshwaram. This teaches that divine will and devotees' efforts must coexist. In art of living, this means balancing Gurudev's guidance with the team's effort. One without the other is incomplete. If we insist on only our way, we repeat Hanuman's mistake. When we surrender and cooperate, the mission shines. Ram did not reject Hanuman's lingam. He gave it honor. Similarly, every contribution in art of living is valued when offered without ego. Now, what is the danger if ego is not dissolved in a spiritual movement? Jagadev, ego divides, isolates, and eventually weakens any mission. Instead of harmony, there is competition and conflict. History shows us many spiritual lineages fractured because of disciples' ego, not the master's teachings. Gurudev ensures this doesn't happen in Art of Living by constantly emphasizing humility, seva, and surrender. The Lingam story warns us ego makes even the strongest powerless. Now, how does Gurudev ensure balancing between recognition and humility? Jagadev, he honors contributions but never lets anyone cling to them, like Ram honoring Hanuman's lingam but keeping his own central. Gurudev gives space for both honor and correction. Sometimes he praises someone unexpectedly, making them feel seen. Other times he deliberately ignores recognition so the ego doesn't grow. This balance keeps everyone aligned with the higher purpose. How does the story show the importance of aligning with the Guru's vision? Jagadev Ram's Sandlingam represented his immediate vision. Hanuman's effort, though sincere, missed the timing. Similarly, in Art of Living, Gurudev's guidance is the Sandlingam, timely aligned with the cosmic flow. If we bring our own plans without aligning, they may not fit. But Gurudev always honors sincere effort, just like Ram honored Hanuman. Alignment is key. Without it, effort feels like struggle. With it, seva flows effortlessly. Now, what can Art of Living teachers learn from Hanuman's humility after realizing his mistake? That admitting one's mistake is not weakness, it is a true strength. Hanuman bowed immediately. Teachers should cultivate the same. If they see ego arising, they should surrender to Gurudev, not resist correction. Humility enhances their teaching power. Now, Gurudev often says, "Be a student always." That humility is Hanuman's spirit. Now, how does Art of Living safeguard against hierarchy turning into ego battles? Jagdeep, by keeping a focus on seva, not position. Titles like senior teacher or office bearer are functional, not status symbols. The Lingam story warns us against attachment to status. Ram did not dismiss Hanumana, but also did not let his pride take over. Balance is the key. Gurudev constantly reminds everyone that the highest honor is to be a sevak, not a leader. How can younger volunteers learn from this story when working with seniors? They can respect seniors but also remember that seva is beyond individuals. Just as both lingams are worshipped, all contributions matter. If they see ego in seniors, they shouldn't get discouraged. Instead, they should learn the lesson. Humility is a true ornament. Now, in Art of Living, Gurudev is the sand lingam, firm, central, immovable. All of us, senior or junior, are secondary. That clarity saves us from disillusionment. Now, what ultimate message does the story give to art of living leaders and volunteers? The message is be devoted like Hanumana, but also surrendered like Hanuman. After the Lingam incident, devotion without humility can falter, but devotion with the humility is eternal in art of living. This means with all your sin, but never think you as are the doer. The mission belongs to Gurudev and the divine. When we remember this, seva becomes effortless. The immovable lingam reminds us divine will is supreme. Our role is simply to align and surrender. Now, in the art of living organization, how does ego show up among some senior teachers or leaders? Jagadev, ego can manifest subtly. Sometimes a senior teacher might feel, I have been teaching for so many years, so I know best, or people follow me more than others. This mirrors Hanuman's thought that when he wanted to bring a bigger Shivlinga than Lord Ramses, but like Hanumana, such teachers eventually realize that it is the Guru's sankalpa or intention, not personal effort, that sustains the movement. The moment one thinks, I am indispensable, the ego tightens its grip. Gurudev's presence and wisdom slowly dissolve this illusion, reminding us that everyone is just an instrument of the divine. Now, how does the story of Hanumana and the Shivalinga reflect the pitfalls of arrogance in organizational life? The Shivalinga that Hanumana could not move represents the immovable truth of Dharma. Similarly, in organizations, arrogance makes people believe they can shift or redefine principles according to their ego, but Dharma is steady. It cannot be moved by personal pride and art of living. If anyone feels larger than the organization or the Guru, they too face a Shivalinga moment where their ego collides with immovable truth. This is when surrender becomes the only path and humility restores balance. Now, why do even senior and sincere people sometimes fall into the trap of ego? Jagat, ego is very tricky. It can hide even behind service. A senior teacher may sincerely serve, but pride can arise. I sacrifice so much. I build the center. I train so many people. These thoughts are subtle but dangerous, just like Hanumana, who had unmatched devotion, slipped momentarily. Even devoted leaders can slip. Gurudev always says ego is not your strength, it is your weakness. Through continuous seva and surrender, one remembers that all accomplishments are because of the Master's grace. Now, how does Gurudev address situations when someone feels bigger than the organization? Gurudev never confronts ego directly in a harsh manner. Instead, he gently creates situations where the person sees their own limitations. Just as Lord Rama asked Hanumana to move the Shivlinga, Gurudev allows leaders to realize that without his sankalpa, their efforts have no power. Sometimes he gives them responsibilities that makes them realize humility is needed, and other times he withdraws attention so they see how dependent they are on his grace. Slowly, the inflated ego melts, replaced with gratitude. Now, can you share an example of Gurudev shattering someone's ego in a compassionate way? Yes, Jai Gurudev, I have seen many instances. Once a senior teacher was very proud of organizing a huge event. After it ended, Gurudev praised everyone equally, including the volunteers who arranged chairs. The teacher expected a special recognition but realized that Gurudev's vision always includes the whole team. This shattered his ego. He realized he was only an instrument, no bigger than anyone else. This mirrors Hanuman's realization at Rameshwaram that devotion and humility matter more than achievement. Now, what role does seva or selfless service play in dissolving ego? Jagadev, seva is the best cure for arrogance. When you serve selflessly, whether washing dishes, arranging flowers, or teaching, ego melts. Hanuman too realized that his role was not to compete with Rama but to serve his mission. In Art of Living, seva keeps everyone grounded because no matter how senior you are, you may be asked to sweep floors or arrange cushions in satsang. These acts remind us that true greatness lies in humility. Now, how do Art of Living courses like Sudarshan Kriya help in managing ego? Negative ego feeds on stress and restlessness. When Sudarshan Kriya dissolves layers of ego, the ego naturally weakens. Participants often share that after the practice, their sense of superiority or inferiority disappears. They feel more connected and humble. For senior leaders, regular practice ensures that they remain instruments, not owners of knowledge. Just as Hanuman's arrogance dissolved in Ram's presence, ego dissolves in the rhythm of the breath, which connects one to the infinite. Now, why is humility such a central value in the art of living? Jagadev, because humility aligns us with truth, pride separates us, humility unites us. Gurudev often says the sign of knowledge is humility. In Art of Living, humility ensures that teachers remain connected to the source. Without humility, even knowledge becomes dry. Then Hanuman's story shows that strength without humility becomes arrogance, but humility makes strength divine. That is why every teacher bows down to the lineage and guru before teaching. Now, how does satsang prevent ego from taking root? Jagadev, satsang is a collective celebration. In satsang, no one is the star. All voices merge into one chorus. So the communal energy prevents individual pride. Even if someone sings beautifully, they dissolve into the collective rhythm. Hanuman's ego was dissolved when he realized the collective sankalpa of Rama was more powerful than his individual effort. In Art of Living, satsang constantly reminds us that it's not about me, it's about us and ultimately about him, the Guru. How do humility and surrender enhance leadership in Art of Living? Jai Gurudev, true leadership in Art of Living comes from surrender. Leaders who surrender to Gurudev's vision lead effortlessly because their decisions are aligned with Dharma. Ego driven leadership, however, creates conflict. Hanuman became the greatest leader of Ram's army only after surrendering his ego. Similarly, Art of Living leaders who surrender become channels of Gurudev's grace. They inspire others not through authority but through humility and seva. Now, how does Gurudev create Hanuman moments in Art of Living to teach humility? Gurudev creates situations that mirror the Sandlingam story. For instance, a teacher or volunteer may be entrusted with a big responsibility or a critical task. When the outcome does not depend solely on their effort, they experience firsthand that the organization's success is not about them but about alignment with the Gurudev's vision. This subtle failure is instructive. It humbles the ego just as Hanuman realized that no amount of strength could move the Sandlingam without surrender to Lord Rama. Now, how are corrections delivered in a way that dissolves ego without causing resentment? Gurudev rarely confronts the ego head on. Instead, he uses experiences, reflection, and indirect feedback. By allowing people to see consequences of ego driven actions, he lets the realization arise internally. This method is far more powerful than direct criticism because it maintains the dignity of the individual, just as Lord Rama honored Hanuman's devotion while teaching him a lesson. Now, how does regular sadhana help in reducing organizational ego? Jagadav, daily practices like meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, and breathing exercises cleanse mental turbulence. Ego thrives on stress, comparison, and restlessness. By calming the mind, practitioners naturally become less self centered and more aligned with the greater vision. Just as Hanuman's ego dissolved in Ram's presence, this inner calm cultivated through sadhana dissolves pride and increases humility. Now, how does Gurudev integrate seva into with ego management? Dear Gurudev, seva, especially when assigned without choice, teaches humility. A senior teacher may find themselves washing dishes, arranging mats, or teaching a small group. These acts remind everyone that no task is beneath them and that all contributions are part of the larger mission. Like Hanumana realizing his strength alone couldn't move the lingam, teachers realize that true greatness is in surrender and service, not possession or recognition. Now, can public recognition affect ego positively or negatively? Jagadav, recognition must be handled carefully. Gurudev often praises contributions but emphasizes collective achievement, not individual pride. When mismanaged, recognition can inflate ego. When managed wisely, it reinforces humility, much like Rama acknowledging Hanuman's devotion but not letting it override the central purpose. This ensures volunteers feel valued, not self-important. Now, how does the story inspire leaders to balance initiative with surrender? Jagadav, leaders are encouraged to take initiative, like Hanumana bringing the Kashi Lingam, yet they must be ready to surrender personal preference to the larger mission. Just as Hanuman accepted Ram's Sand Lingam as central, in Art of Living, this balance ensures that the energy flows into constructive efforts rather than ego conflicts. Now, what does this story teach about mentoring in Art of Living? Jagadev, mentors must guide without fostering dependence or ego. Gurudev models this by letting teachers learn from experience, correcting subtly when needed, like Rama guiding Hanumana. Mentors help the next generation realize their strengths and limitations, encouraging humility while nurturing talent. Now, how does the sandling metaphor apply to daily challenges? Regular every time we encounter obstacles that cannot be moved by strength alone, we face our own sandlingam. These are moments to check our ego and surrender in art of living, whether managing a center, teaching a course, or organizing an event. Once his personal pride must be subordinated to the mission, the sandlingam reminds us that divine will and dharma are immovable truths. Now, how do leaders ensure the mission thrives without ego interfering? By prioritizing service, alignment with the Gurudev's vision, and collective harmony, ego driven decisions often fragment teams, while surrendered leadership unites them. Just as Hanuman's realization allowed his devotion to reach new heights, leaders who let go of ego see the mission expand organically. Now, what is the ultimate takeaway from the Hanuman and Rameshwaram Shivalinga story for art of living practitioners? Jagadev, the story teaches that strength, devotion, and talent are incomplete without humility and surrender. Ego obstructs even the greatest efforts, but surrender transforms limitations into eternal glory. In the context of Art of Living, it reminds teachers, volunteers, and leaders that the organization and its mission are greater than any individual. Gurudev systematically shatters ego through experiences, seva, sadhana, and gentle guidance, ensuring everyone remains aligned with Dharma. Just as Hanuman's devotion became flawless after surrendering to Rama, practitioners and leaders reach their highest potential when they surrender personal pride to divine will, Jagadev.